today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Denmark's former IBF featherweight champion, Sarah Mahfoud, has already booked herself another fight, having already seen action earlier this month.
She's set to see action again over a month from now in late May.
And it's good of them to do it. It's good of them to keep Sarah Mahfoud as busy as she can be, because Sarah just so happens to campaign in one of the deeper divisions in the sport of women's boxing, and she needs to stay sharp. There's some stiff competition climbing up those ranks.
She needs to be ready.
Unbeaten up-and-comers like Raven Chapman, who will see action this weekend, Karis Ardingstall as well from the United Kingdom, Sky Nicholson
From Australia.
Sarah Liegman, and Sophie Elish from Germany.
Stiff competition.
Sarah, being a former champion with more rounds in the bank than many of these fighters, she is already a more experienced professional than they are, amassing even more experience, sporting a professional record of 12 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 13 professional contests. Sarah has since rebounded off that lopsided decision loss to none other than this division's current undisputed champion, Amanda Serrano. She managed to go the distance.
Her lone defeat in 13 professional bouts.
There's no shame in it. Amanda Serrano being one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport, and this division's current reigning undisputed champion.
There's no shame in losing to her.
Being last seen action earlier this month on the 4th, opposite the ring Germany's own Lara Ochman, Sarah managed to pick up a WBC silver title.
It's the same silver title that Sky Nicholson picked up in the Tania Alvarez fight. Apparently, Sky must have dropped it.
The title was then made available for both Sarah Mahfoud and Lara Ochman to compete for. Needless to say, Sarah won the fight.
I half expected to hear news that Sarah Mahfoud would be sharing the ring with Sky Nicholson in her very next fight, as Sky seems to have ambitions of picking up some form of an alphabet title in her next fight in the immediate future.
I don't get the sense it'll be Sarah's WBC silver title that she will be fighting Sarah in her very next fight, it being that Sarah's next fight is set to go down in Denmark.
I hardly think Sky Nicholson's going to travel to Sarah Mahfoud's neck of the woods for a fight. That's not a matchroom show.
It obviously isn't. Sarah's next fight looks to be against someone else, an opponent that has yet to be announced, though I don't rule out the possibility that at some point later on this year, these two could end up fighting, both Sarah Mahfoud and Sky Nicholson.
It can happen.
Even if it's not next, both fighters, they've got plenty of time. Sarah Mahfoud, she's 33 years old, plenty of good years left.
Just racked up a solid victory, picked up a solid scalp in Lara Ochman.
I can only wonder who she is going to fight next, though the fact she's getting out there so quickly, so soon after having fought, that tells me she's on the ball. She knows what she's doing.
May 26th, she's set to return to action, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
And as soon as we know who it is exactly she's going to be fighting. Men's junior middleweight news. Junior middleweight division's undisputed champion Jermell Charlo offers positive injury update. Looks to fight Tszyu by the end of the summer.
Jermell Charlo was under orders by way of the WBO to provide medical documentation detailing his prognosis and ETA.
When's he coming back?
And they were right to do it.
The hand is going well, Charlo told Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast. I'm just doing everything I can with rehab. I haven't been able to train. I have not punched yet, but when you break 2 bones in one hand, it takes a lot to recover. The hand is real delicate. These are my money makers. It's going to be stronger than it was before. I'm doing a lot of exercises and work to make sure I'm stable. I don't want to get in there and shatter a hand during a fight or place myself in a position where I got to have another issue. I was in a cast for about 6-7 weeks, Charlo continued. I remember going back and they put me back in the cast, but finally I was able to get out of the cast and doing rehab, putting the weight back on. Still, to this very day, taking time out, I'm working. I got some time, but I'll be back.
Jermell Charlo, he only fought once last year, and that was the Brian Castaño rematch. Great fight.
But it was less than ideal, less than opportune for this division. So soon after it provides a blockbuster match between 2 of its champions and an undisputed champion is crowned, that champion only saw action once.
The rematch between him and Brian brought in very good metrics to the Showtime platform, the kind of metrics they don't normally put up. Close to 1 million viewers.
I'm going to say it was at or around 800,000, close to 1 million. A lot of fights on Showtime. They don't put up numbers like that.
Fights on regular Showtime.
This one did. Asked when he thinks a fight with Tszyu will materialize, Charlo suggested either July or August, by the end of the summer or something, Charlo said. Hopefully, the middle of this year. It could be August, it could be July, it could be whenever.
It may be over a year's time in between fights for Jermell Charlo. Over a year's time in between his last fight and this fight. Assuming this fight even happens, I'm still not convinced that it will.
And it's not because I think that Jermell Charlo is afraid of Tszyu or running from Tszyu.
No, I don't think he's scared of that guy.
I just think that Jermell Charlo, it's less than ideal for him to fight Tszyu under these circumstances. He's already spent a lot of time in the men's junior middleweight division, and I feel like the PBC, what they want to do is move their existing junior middleweights up to middleweight and some of their middleweights up to super middleweight.
That maybe Jermell goes up to 160 and Jermall goes up to 168.
That's what I think. 2 of the 4 alphabet titles in the current men's middleweight division are right there on PBC Island. Arislandi Lara was very recently elevated to full WBA champion, and Jermell's brother, Jermell, he's still got the WBC title.
He's supposed to be coming back real soon.
As well as his brother, Jermell, who said he's a solid fighter, but nothing that I've never seen before, in reference to Tszyu.
Charlo versus Tszyu is one of those fights that's almost guaranteed to end in a knockout based on the stylistic matchup. The boxer-puncher versus the pressure fighter.
Charlo being the boxer-puncher and Tszyu being the pressure fighter.
That's it.
He's a solid fighter, said Charlo to Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast. He's strong. He comes to fight, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. I've been in boxing my whole life, seen almost every style. At the moment, Charlo is continuing to rigorously attack his rehab stint with a return date of late summer being targeted. While he could attempt to test his surgically repaired left hand on lesser foe.
No, he can't.
Not without relinquishing the WBO title. I mean, that's why they put him on the spot. That's why they asked him for medical documentation that details when exactly is he going to be coming back. He can't fight someone else without surrendering the brown belt to Tszyu.
He has to be next.
And never mind that Jermell Charlo already has 2 other mandatory challengers waiting in the queue, not including Tszyu. He's got Sebastian Fundoria by way of the WBC and Bakram Mirchzaliev by way of the IBF.
He's been the mandatory challenger since late 2019.
He was actually already the IBF's mandatory challenger before Charlo picked up the IBF title in 2020.
Jermell's got a full plate at 154 pounds as that division's undisputed champion, and I don't know.
I just don't know how much longer he's gonna stay there. He was quoted as saying, I don't think he being Tszyu, I don't think he possesses anything tough for me that I can't handle.
Experience-wise, you have to give Charlo the edge, and stylistically, he has an advantage there as well.
So if the fight with Tszyu happens in either June or July, it will have been over a year's time since Charlo saw action. That's a disadvantage. And tack on that he's coming off a hand injury and surgery, rehabilitation for it.
It's another disadvantage.
Charlo's got ring rust to shake off, which could, in theory, at least in theory, affect his timing, and he's coming right off of an injury.
Tszyu being a physical fighter, a pressure fighter that pushes the pace and presses the action.
Jermell's timing in a fight like that, with a fighter like that, it needs to be sharp. It needs to be on point so that he can, in effect, sharpshoot and catch him between the shots, between the punches, because Tim's going to throw him.
You don't want to go into a Tszyu fight flat. You don't want to go into a fight with any pressure fighter.
You can't afford to be flat. You have to be sharp, because they're going to force you to fight, or they're going to try to.
I still don't know that this fight happens.
What was supposed to be the fight between Leo Santa Cruz and Lee Wood, their fiasco, that situation drug out just like this situation, and in the end, it didn't result in a fight. I wasn't confident that that fight would ever happen. In truth, I'm not confident that this fight will happen.
I'm not.
And I reiterate, it's not because I think that Jermell Charlo is afraid of Tszyu or running from Tszyu, but I think the higher-ups at the PBC have other plans for their junior middleweights.
And middleweights.
I think they want to move their guys up. I think it's a cycle. I think they want to move their guys from 154 up to 160, and their guys from 160 up to 168.
That's what I think.
Though provided that I'm wrong, and Jermell actually stays at junior middleweight, and he actually fights Tszyu, Jermell is welcoming a Crawford fight at 154. Get your paperwork right. Talk to Mr. Heyman. We'll get a fight going.
A fight like that is contingent upon many, many factors.
I see guys moving up, Charlo said on the Last Stand podcast with Brian Custer. I told you, you got the Crawford and stuff calling you out. They're moving up in weight. Whatever is the big money fight is the big money, and at the end of the day, we don't fight for free. It's a prize fight. Being at this top level, I just want my recognition. I want that love that I deserve. I'm still one of the most underrated and highest rated fighters, so that gives me the hunger. I gotta continue that. We could still make some money. I can still get to the bag at 154. The window is still open for me.
Let's say Crawford petitions the WBO to move up in weight as Jermell's mandatory challenger, by way of the WBO, by way of Terrence's super champion status.
A designation that allows a WBO champion to move up in weight as the mandatory challenger for the WBO champion at a higher weight. Let's say he were to do that right now. There would be at least 3 guys ahead of Terrence in the queue.
Bakram Murtazaliev by way of the IBF, Sebastian Fundora by way of the WBC, and Tim Tszyu by way of the WBO.
Even if Terrence dropped everything and tried to do this right now, and even if the WBO let him, we'd still be a ways out from a fight like that. Jermell continued, whatever, guy. You get your paperwork right, talk to Mr. Heyman, and we'll get a fight going, Charlo said. You're damn right it'll be easy to make. Let's get a big fight going, matter of fact, and I'll show you better than I can take. Ain't nothing easy in the ring with me.
There's nothing easy about making this fight, not based on what's going on.
Making this fight is contingent upon several factors. Jermell has to not only stay at junior middleweight for Terrence to move up and fight him, but he's got to take care of Tim Tszyu, and he's got to win. He's under orders to fight him, just as Terrence Crawford is under orders to fight Alexis Rocha.
They're both under orders.
These kids, they're just talking, Charlo said of Crawford, who's actually older than he is. He ain't fought nobody, for real. He just got out of Top Rank because Top Rank had Bob Arum, didn't want his ass, so he just got rid of him. It's just like, I don't know, why don't you make the fight with the man that's in front of you? Errol's been calling you out. Get in the ring, man. We don't know who these last guys are. Signing deals with BLK, he's just doing business wrong. He's sloppy with his business. I don't know what he wants to do, but I'm down to fight. I don't got no time to go back and forth with him. You're a little boy. You come from 140.
135, actually. He's a 3-division champion.
You're not even strong enough to handle my shit that I be throwing at you. I'm not none of these guys that you fought before. I'm undisputed for a reason, and in truth, Crawford versus Charlo, undisputed champion versus undisputed champion.
Because they've both been undisputed before.
It's a fight that makes a lot of sense, but oftentimes in this sport, it's the fights that make the most sense that don't happen.
If Crawford has been struggling to get Errol Spence Jr. in the ring at his own weight, he'd likely struggle to get Jermell as well.
They're both Heyman fighters. They're both PBC guys. Before it becomes about Jermell Charlo, I think it must first become about Errol Spence Jr. There seems to be a rumor going around
that they've gone back into negotiations behind the scenes.
An interesting set of breadcrumbs left behind by way of social media. Chris Mannix tweeted, Alexis Rocha is pushing for a purse bid for the recently ordered WBO welterweight title fight against Terrence Crawford, sources told Sports Illustrated Now. The two sides have been negotiating but have been unable to reach a deal. Is it possible that Terrence Crawford has now shifted gears and he's got something else in mind?
Something else to do.
You might have noticed a day or so ago that Errol Spence Jr. tweeted, I don't apologize for the inactivity, LOL. Hopefully, it'll make sense in a few weeks.
What could he be referring to?
Both he and Terrence Crawford jointly are under orders by way of the alphabet organizations to satisfy their mandatory challengers. Errol's supposed to satisfy former champion Keith Thurman as his mandatory by way of the WBC, and Terrence is supposed to fight Alexis Rocha as his mandatory by way of the WBO. But things have gone quiet for the both of these fighters, the both of these champions.
Terrence Crawford stated quite cryptically, we're at the end.
There's a rumor going around, a rumor that's becoming more and more prevalent, that these guys have in fact been negotiating behind the scenes, and they're looking at a June 17th fight date to finally hash it out. Now, as you can imagine, there's more work needs doing. They both have mandatories to satisfy, thus, they both have mandatories that need to stand down, that need to step aside.
But that's the rumor.
That when Errol Spence Jr. says that he don't apologize for the inactivity because he's gonna make up for it, well, he can't be talking about a Keith Thurman fight because nobody was demanding that, and if there's a lag, if there's a delay in the negotiations between Terrence and Alexis Rocha, it's because he's fighting Errol Spence.
Sanction's got to get out of its own way for this one. The sanctioning bodies have to let these guys fight.
Nothing else in the welterweight division takes precedence over the fight between them that has been approximately 4-5 years in the making. A very difficult fight to iron out, but the single most important fight in this division, in this weight class. And no mandatory challenger takes precedence over this.
I'm not trying to get your hopes up. I'm just relaying the same information to you that was given to me.
And that's why this show is called The Relay. All I can do is relay that intel to you. What you do with it after that is up to you.
Well, as stated, before it becomes about Crawford versus Charlo, it must first become about Crawford versus Spence, and it appears that it just might.
In light of downsizing and budget cuts over there on Showtime due to Paramount absorbing them into their existing Paramount Plus platform, it appears that Showtime has been given approximately 2 years, or just under that, to show up and show out.
Showtime Sports.
There are already a couple of shows on Showtime that have been given the axe, but their boxing programming is not one among them. In this grace period that we talked about a few weeks ago, it's their opportunity to put on the best fight.
Put on the best shows. Put on the best fights, so you can thereby garner the best metrics. And Spence versus Thurman, that ain't gonna cut it.
Showtime Boxing is under pressure, and those alternatives and substitute fights, like a Spence versus Thurman fight, that ain't gonna deliver you the best metrics you can get for a Spence fight, but the Crawford fight.
This needs to be a big year for Showtime Boxing.
You see, they're really pushing that Benavidez kid, who's gonna be in action this weekend opposite the ring, his old buddy, Caleb Plant. You see, they've finally gotten the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight over the line, and you hear rumors.
But behind closed doors, they've re-entered negotiations. They're close to reaching a deal, and the fight between them could go down June 17th.
I don't think a lot of people even want to get their hopes up, though if that news broke, it would be welcome news. Welcome news to everyone, whether you're a Terrence Crawford fan or an Errol Spence Jr. fan, if they finally did iron out a deal and made the fight.
And because Showtime is under pressure to deliver good metrics, they might.
Showtime Sports, Showtime Boxing, they have to justify their presence on that platform and show their higher-ups why they should continue to show boxing.
They've got to pull out all the stops.
And that might mean finally making this fight.